HOA built a bridge over my ranch. It just happened to collapse while they walked on it. Have you ever felt the chilling invasion of your personal sanctuary, the very ground you stand on, when someone audacious and entitled attempts to claim what is rightfully yours, literally building over your life with blatant disregard for your rights and safety? I'm Elias Thorne, and my family's ranch, Whispering Pines Homestead, nestled deep in the rolling foothills, was more than just a home. It was a legacy. For generations, we've raised heritage livestock and cultivated organic produce, supplying local markets and a community-supported agriculture (CSA) program that feeds hundreds of families. Our property was bisected by a natural gully, a seasonal creek bed that, while dry most of the year, became a rushing torrent during the spring thaw, a vital part of the local ecosystem. Then, Ms. Genevieve Sterling arrived. Genevieve, the newly elected, self-anointed queen of the sprawling, pristine Grandview Estates Homeowners Association, saw our working ranch not as a vital community asset, but as an unacceptable rural intrusion. She was all sharp angles and sharper pronouncements, a woman whose perfectly coiffed silver hair and designer activewear screamed unapproachable perfection. Her first official act, it seemed, was to send us a curt, imperious letter demanding the immediate remediation of the gully. It was, according to her, unsightly, a clear danger to community children, and a blatant violation of Grandview's aesthetic guidelines. Her ultimate, thinly veiled demand was for us to fill in the gully and replace it with a manicured lawn, effectively destroying a natural waterway and forcing us to conform to Grandview's elevated standards. Her tone was dripping with condescension, her words a thinly veiled threat against everything I held dear. She looked at our ranch, a testament to nature's rhythm, as if it were a festering wound on the pristine landscape she envisioned. I tried to reason with her, calmly explaining that the gully was a natural, protected waterway, essential for managing rainwater runoff and supporting local wildlife. I even provided documentation from the County Environmental Protection Agency, highlighting its ecological importance. Genevieve merely waved a dismissive hand, her perfectly manicured nails glinting. "Mr. Thorne," she purred, her voice a brittle whisper of disdain, "your primitive methods are simply not suited for the elevated standards of Grandview Estates. We are building a community of distinction, and frankly, your natural ditch detracts from our property values. The bylaws are clear. All natural features must be uniform and aesthetically pleasing." Her words, delivered with an air of unassailable authority, left no room for debate. She was not interested in ecology or natural processes. She was interested in control and conformity. The true nightmare began on a crisp spring morning, just as the seasonal creek began to swell with snowmelt. I stepped out to check on the gully, only to find a scene of utter violation. A crew of construction workers, directed by a smirking Genevieve, were actively building a massive, ornate wooden bridge directly over the gully, spanning my property. They weren't just building, they were driving heavy pilings into the creek bed, disrupting the natural flow, and ignoring the private property signs I'd posted. The bridge, clearly designed for pedestrian traffic, was being constructed without any consultation or permits from me or the county. Crude signs, emblazoned with the Grandview Estates HOA logo, were hammered into the ground, declaring the area community access authorized by HOA. My heart pounded with a mix of fury and disbelief. They had built a bridge over my land, effectively claiming a public right-of-way where none existed and disrupting a vital natural waterway. As I stared at the rapidly progressing construction, a glint of white caught my eye near the newly driven pilings. It was a discarded, official-looking county survey marker, clearly not from the HOA, but from the county's historical land registry. My blood ran cold. I quickly photographed the scene and then, driven by a gnawing suspicion, I retrieved the marker. Its faded inscription pointed to a series of underground springs and a natural, ancient aquifer system that fed not only my property's wells, but also supplied a significant portion of the drinking water for the lower-lying sections of Grandview Estates. Genevieve had not only ignored my warnings about ecological balance, she had deliberately, unknowingly, compromised a vital natural water flow by driving pilings directly into the aquifer. And then, a chilling detail, tucked beneath a pile of discarded lumber, I found a crumpled, mud-stained blueprint for a new, exclusive community hiking trail. The blueprint showed that the proposed trail was to utilize the new bridge and cut directly through a significant portion of the neighborhood's common green space, leading to a scenic overlook. The beautification was a pretext. This wasn't just about my gully. It was a calculated, high-stakes conspiracy, threatening not only my property, but a vital public resource and the community's shared water supply. The most disturbing part: a small, almost invisible notation on the blueprint indicated that the trail would pass directly through a known geological fault line, a fact deliberately suppressed in her HOA presentations. Armed with this irrefutable evidence, the photos of the illegal construction, the county survey marker, the discarded blueprint, and my detailed knowledge of the community's common areas, I resolved to confront Genevieve publicly. I learned she had called an emergency HOA meeting, ostensibly to present a new community initiative, the Grandview Estates Scenic Hiking Trail, and to celebrate the completion of the new community bridge. I arrived, my evidence ready, just as Genevieve, radiating an almost unbearable smugness, began her presentation, complete with glossy renderings of the new trail and the magnificent bridge. I waited for a lull, then stood up, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Genevieve," I stated, holding up the survey marker, "I believe this small marker and the bridge you've just built sheds a rather inconvenient light on your scenic trail initiative." Her eyes, which had been sparkling with self-satisfaction, immediately narrowed. She quickly recovered, her voice sharp. "Mr. Thorne, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is a private HOA matter. You are disrupting our proceedings, and your dramatics are quite unnecessary." She attempted to rally the other HOA members, painting me as a disgruntled, eccentric rancher, a nuisance to their refined community. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely the kind of element we are trying to remove from our beautiful Grandview. But just as she was about to call for me to be removed, a quiet, unassuming man named Dr. Anya Sharma, a renowned hydrologist and geologist from the State Water Resources Board, rose from her seat. He had been attending the meeting incognito, alerted by a tip from one of my farmhands who had noticed the strange construction activity. "Actually, Ms. Sterling," Dr. Sharma interjected, his voice calm but authoritative, "Mr. Thorne raises a very serious point. And I also have something to add." He then projected a series of topographical maps onto the screen. Clear, undeniable images showing the natural underground water flows, the aquifer system, and, crucially, the geological fault line directly beneath the proposed bridge. "This bridge," Dr. Sharma continued, his voice gaining strength, "is a direct violation of county zoning laws and environmental regulations. It has compromised a vital drinking water source, and its construction over an active fault line poses an extreme danger to anyone who uses it." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Before Genevieve could even stammer a denial, the doors to the community hall swung open. Two stern-faced police officers, accompanied by a representative from the county planning department, walked in. They had been tipped off by Dr. Sharma, who had contacted them after seeing the suspicious activity around my property and confirming my initial suspicions. Genevieve Sterling, one of the planning officials, announced, his voice devoid of emotion, "You are in violation of multiple county ordinances. The construction of an unauthorized structure on private property, the obstruction of a natural waterway, and the suppression of geological and hydrological reports constitute felonies. We also have reports of forged permits submitted to the county for this trail project." Genevieve's face, which had been a mask of carefully constructed composure, crumbled into a terrified, pale mess. Her jaw went slack, her eyes darting wildly around the room, searching for an escape that wasn't there. She stammered, then erupted into a desperate, high-pitched shriek, blaming misunderstandings, overzealous contractors, and a misunderstanding of the land deeds. It was the pathetic wail of a tyrant whose kingdom had suddenly collapsed. Then, a surprising voice emerged from the crowd. Mr. Davies, a long-standing, quiet member of the HOA board and a respected local real estate agent, stood up, his face etched with regret. "And Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "perhaps you'd also like to explain why you pushed so hard for this scenic trail project, not for the community's benefit, But because your husband's construction company, Sterling Builds, stood to gain millions from the contracts, and you were promised a substantial personal consulting fee from the deal, all under the guise of community enhancement. The revelation hung in the air, a final, poisoned arrow. Genevieve had been exploiting the HOA not for the community's benefit, but for her own illicit financial gain and her husband's profit. The fallout was swift and brutal. Genevieve was immediately stripped of her HOA presidency, her reign ending in public humiliation and a perp walk captured by local news. The police and county planning department launched a full-scale investigation, leading to severe fines and criminal charges for property destruction, environmental violations, and attempted land appropriation. Sterling Builds, facing legal repercussions and public outrage, immediately lost their lucrative contracts and faced a barrage of investigations, leaving Genevieve utterly isolated and financially ruined. She lost her position, her reputation, her social standing, and faced a future of crushing debt and legal battles. Her karma was a public, humiliating spectacle, a direct consequence of her petty tyranny and audacious fraud. As for the bridge, the county immediately issued a stop work order and declared the structure unsafe. Just as the meeting concluded, and as Genevieve was being led away in handcuffs, a low rumble shook the ground. The spring thaw had reached its peak, and the gully, now a raging torrent, surged against the illegally driven pilings. With a deafening crack, the magnificent, ornate wooden bridge, the symbol of Genevieve's arrogance, buckled and then, with a groan of tortured timber, collapsed into the churning waters below, carrying with it a few of the HOA members who had lingered on it, still trying to get a closer look at the new community feature. They were quickly rescued, shaken but unharmed, by the arriving emergency services, a stark, immediate consequence of Genevieve's reckless disregard for safety and the environment. I felt a profound sense of vindication, a quiet triumph that justice, however painfully achieved, had prevailed. My ranch remained our sanctuary, its natural gully now flowing freely, and the community, shaken but united, began the process of rebuilding trust and respecting the delicate balance of property rights and the environment. In a world where bureaucratic power can become a weapon and individual ego can lead to audacious exploitation and criminal acts, where do we draw the line between upholding rules and protecting personal property and the environment? When faced with such blatant disregard for rights, safety, and the well-being of others, what would you have done?